Hey everyone, my name's Amanda and I'm the Fun Size Reader, and today I wanted to give you a recap of Court by Tracy Wolff before the next book, Cherish, or if you're watching this before Charm and Cherish come out. This is going to be a long video, y'all. And this is going to be full of spoilers. It is a recap video, so if you haven't read the book, watch at your own risk, unless you're just trying to watch to find out what happens, because this is literally going to be from start to finish of what happened in Court. We start off with the group of the gang essentially being back on Katmir's property after having the battle at the Unkillable Beast Island where they fought Cyrus. Luca died and Flint's leg couldn't be saved, so he now doesn't have a leg from his injury. Jackson has the dragon heart that Flint's mom gave up, so now Jackson was saved because his soul was going to be taken and gone. They freed the Unkillable Beast, and the Unkillable Beast gave Grace the crown, which we don't really know what that does yet. The group has to decide what to do with Luca's body because he's a vampire, and so if he's not buried in their crypt within 24 hours, he will turn to dust. Grace runs into the Unkillable Beast on her way back to her room through Katmir, and they end up transporting to the Gargoyle Court, where she sees basically this army of gargoyles that have been living there and training and surviving for an unknown amount of time. We find out from the Unkillable Beast that his name is really Alistair, and he is actually her grandfather. Well, her great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. He tells Grace that he really wants to find his mate when he gets back to Katmir from the Gargoyle Academy or Gargoyle Court, and would have hoped that his mate would have made herself known to Grace already. While they're at the court, she sees that the gargoyles that are still alive are actually this huge army that they've been training for thousands and thousands of years, and that they are still alive. When they come back, Grace realizes that only a few minutes have really passed since she left Katmir, and then Alistair, the Gargoyle King, runs off mumbling into the night. She has no idea where he goes, but she does notice that she still has the emerald ring that Alistair gave her, indicating that he has passed on to her the ability to be the queen of the Gargoyle Court. The gang decided to call Luca's parents and have them come get him so he could be buried, but when Luca's parents show up, they realize that it was actually a distraction from Cyrus, and Maurice, who was the nurse that was at the school who was helping them recover, was actually working for Cyrus and betrayed them to get Cyrus and his people to attack them while they were at the school. They try to get out of there as soon as they realize that Luca's parents were a distraction, but a werewolf shows up named Dawood, I think that's how you say his name, who basically tells them he's here to help them because Cyrus actually took his brother when he kidnapped all of the students from Katmir. Macy acts quickly and makes a portal so that they can get out of there and get to the witch court to be in safe haven, but Jackson and Hudson stay behind to try to fight off all of the people that are coming after them. In the process of fighting them off, they essentially destroy the entire Katmir Academy. But at the last second, they're able to run to the portal and make it to safety into the witch court. When they arrive at the witch court, they're met by a bunch of guards who tell them that they're not welcome there. The witch court doesn't want them there, despite whether they are claiming sanctuary or not, and whether or not they have a witch with them. They essentially get kicked out of the witch court, but the king and queen make a deal with them that they will stand with them against Cyrus if they rescue all of the kids from the vampire court where Cyrus has taken them, because they don't want to get involved, but they want all of the kids back. The queen's sister also drops the bomb to them that Macy's mom has been at the vampire court this entire time, where pretty much all of Macy's life, she thought that she had just ran off and didn't want to be with her anymore. We also learn that the witches are very scared of the crown that Grace holds from the Gargoyle King, because the crown has the ability to take away the powers of any magical creature, and that the gargoyles have been doing this over time as punishment for crimes that a magical creature has created. they escape from the witch court and they decide to go back to the gargoyle court. But as soon as they get there to this court in Ireland where Grace was before with Alistair, they realize that the whole thing is in ruins. And so Grace is really confused because she's like, I just saw this and it didn't look like this before. They decide to stay somewhere nearby, and during one of the nights that they're there, Hudson tells Grace that he wants her to use the power of the crown to take his powers away from him. This causes kind of an argument and kind of leads towards Hudson's character development, where he like doesn't want his powers and it's really bad and he like doesn't like them and it steals parts of his soul, but that comes later. Grace decides that she wants to start tugging on random strings and tugs on her emerald green string that we've been waiting to find out what happens, and basically explodes the side of the lighthouse that they're staying in. They go to see the bloodletter because they decided that that power is similar to the bloodletter's power, so they're going to try to ask her questions. When they get there, the bloodletter confirms that she is Alistair's mate. So she is the mate of the Gargoyle King, the one that was supposed to make herself known to Grace. So that also means that she's Grace's great whatever grandmother. We also find out that the bloodletter is the god of chaos, which then makes Grace a demigod and kind of is connected to that green string, her demigod power. The bloodletter then tells Grace the story of her mating to Alistair and how Cyrus kind of took over in power of the vampires from the bloodletter after she was mated. She also talks about how he like really desired a lot of power and he got a poison from the god of order, which we determined was the crone, and used that poison to poison the entire gargoyle army. The bloodletter then made an agreement with the god of time, which froze the gargoyles in time in the gargoyle court so that nothing could happen to them and the poison wouldn't actually kill them. She also hid her magic from her daughter so that Cyrus wouldn't kill her daughter, and subsequently all of the magic in all of the rest of the gargoyle lines, which is why there were no gargoyles that were born. They find out that Grace somehow has put a hole in time, and the god of time named Jikan, I'm not sure how to say his name, shows up. He fixes the hole in time, and after a bunch of conversation, he tells them that the only thing that can save the gargoyle army from the poison and therefore get them unfrozen out of time are called the Tears of Elos. To get the tears, they have to go to a place in St. Augustine, Florida. He transports them there to a taffy shop where there's a lady working the front counter and she's kind of mean. Eventually they get her to take them through a back door. They walk through the back door and they see that there's this entire huge arena there, and they find out from her that in order to get the Tears of Elos, you have to complete these trials, but nobody has ever completed them and every single person who's ever tried has died. They also find out that the Tears of Elos are the fountain of youth. She convinces them that they're not ready to try, and they basically agree and don't do it at that point. So since they're convinced not to try, they don't. But they do find out that Cyrus, who kidnapped all of the kids, is torturing them and stealing their power from them. They go back to Ireland, not to the gargoyle court, but to the lighthouse area that they were staying at, and Macy, Mackay, and Flint all leave on their own to try to go save them, whereas the other half of the group didn't because they wanted to have a plan. They then decide, after half the group has left, that they do need to go to the vampire court to save everyone, even though they don't really know. So they go through Hudson's lair, and they were met on the other side by Cyrus's guards. They get captured, they get put into cells that were made by the same thing that in the prison kept them from having magic. And then they find out that a girl named Isadora is there, and she is actually Jackson and Hudson's older but bastard sister. We also find out that Macy's mom is in the cells, and she is there for a life sentence because she was found to be spying on the vampire court. And we find out that Uncle Finn knew the whole time. Cyrus tells Grace that he wants her to get him the Godstone, which he says is being guarded at the gargoyle court. If she doesn't do this, he says he's just going to kill everyone. So she takes everybody through her stone to the gargoyle court to search for the stone. And they see Chastain, who is the leader of the gargoyle army. They have to look around for the stone, so they decide to stay there since time is warped and it's like They can spend more time there, but less time in the real world passes. So they stay there to train with the gargoyle army and to find the stone. During one of their nights there, they get attacked by a bunch of these skeleton things, which they determine that they are gargoyles who have died while frozen in time, and their souls never really get any peace. They don't get to move on, and they just continually attack the gargoyle court. Hudson poofs them all and makes them all go away, but then he goes a little bit crazy because he says that he just killed a bunch of gargoyles and that every single person that he kills takes a piece of his soul with him. We soon determine that Chastain is actually the one that has the Godstone, and he has it in a ring on his finger. We find out that the only way to get the Godstone is to challenge him for it, and because he's protecting it. We find out that Isadora is actually Cyrus's bastard child, and that she, just like Hudson and Jackson, each have 2 powers. We find out that Cyrus locked her in a crypt for 1,000 years, trying to get her to have more than 1 power. Grace uses her demigod power again, which the god of time told her was not fully developed, so he told her not to use it. She uses it to try to get the stone from Chastain, and the god of time shows up. He says, "You didn't listen to me, so I'm going to unbreak my promise to the bloodletter and unfreeze the gargoyle army." So now, in order for them to not all die from the poison, they have to turn straight into stone. Grace tells Chastain that she needs the stone because she's trying to save all of the kids, so he gives it to her because he says gargoyles will do whatever they need to do to protect the vulnerable. Then all of a sudden, Remy and Calder show up, and Remy decides to make a bunch of portals to transport them back to the vampire court. Cyrus goes back on his deal because Grace convinces Izzy to be the one to give him to the Godstone. So he says, because you, Grace, didn't bring it to me, our deal's null and void, so I'm not gonna release the kids. Grace turns him into stone and gets brought into a memory with him where she sees that he was having an affair on Delilah. She also sees that he's like essentially planning this huge takeover. When they come back to reality, there's absolute mayhem and fighting going on in the court. Cyrus locks them up again, and Grace strikes a deal with Delilah to let them all go if she will help Delilah essentially get revenge on Cyrus once this all plays out. We then find out that Izzy is the crone's daughter, so she's Grace's cousin and also a demigod. Rowena was spying on the vampire court because she was supposed to bring the crone's daughter back to her as part of an agreement for something else, and she has not been able to do that, so she can't get out of the prison. So she can't leave until they bring Izzy back to the crone. Once they essentially trick Izzy into going back to the crone frees Rowena's debt, so now she's free to go. The crone also tells Izzy that she thought she was dead because Cyrus told her that her daughter was killed. The crone then also says she does want revenge on Cyrus as well, but she needs him to be a false god to do that, so she really needs him to get the Godstone. They go their separate ways, and Izzy goes back to the vampire court while everybody else goes to the witch court to check on everyone and to drop Rowena off with Uncle Finn. They gather up a bunch of magical items and determine that it is now time to go back to Florida to see if they can compete in the trials to win the Tears of Elos. They start the trials, which are a combo of a bunch of like puzzles and then monsters that the other half of the group have to deal with. The puzzle needs to be solved to save whoever's trapped with the monster. The first puzzle is like falling bricks and poison gas. The second one we don't really know, but we know that they have to deal with a bunch of like shadows and these like poisonous bugs. The third one, they have to drink a bunch of potions, which make them do a bunch of weird things, while the other ones are solving the problems. The last challenge is this giant beast that they have to defeat. The beast ends up killing Byron and Raphael, 2 more members of Jackson's court, and majorly injuring Mackay. When Grace realizes that he's still alive, she heals him, but they also notice that he's been bitten by one of these bugs, which has caused him to still be poisoned. Macy and Grace come up with a plan to use portals like on the Ludaris field to try to kill this beast, and in the process the beast rips off one of Grace's gargoyle wings. Grace decides to have mercy on the beast because it doesn't know what it's doing and everybody is always trying to kill it, and she uses her healing powers to heal the beast. The beast then turns into a little boy, and Tess, who was the lady who worked at the taffy shop, comes running in, crying, saying, "My baby, my baby." She then tells Grace that the baby was cursed because she made a bad decision in the past, and she had to watch her child essentially be attempted to be murdered all the time. She tells her that they won, and Grace gets the elixir in the chalice, which are the tears of Ilios, and she drinks it. She then uses her power to heal all of the gargoyles with these tears, rubbing it all over their strings. The army is then healed, which means that Cyrus is no longer immortal. But Chastain tells Grace that he's not going to let the army follow her, because he says she is a fake gargoyle queen. They make a portal, they go to Alaska because Cyrus is going to use the Godstone during the eclipse to turn himself into a god. They come up with a plan, they start the plan, battle ensues between Cyrus's side and our 10 people. Jackson gets hurt and him and Flint have a moment, but we also determine here that because Jackson has a dragon heart, he can now transform into a dragon. Calder dies saving Remy, and then Grace can't handle it anymore and she surrenders to Cyrus. She strikes a deal for the safety of her and all of her friends so that they can't be hurt in order to give Cyrus information. He agrees, but she lied and there was no information to give. Cyrus then straps them to the machine and says, "I'm going to drain all of your power," which he's allowed to do because it technically doesn't harm them. Cyrus uses the machine and drains them all of their power and turns himself into a god. Grace then decides enough is enough and she yanks on her green string. This essentially brings out all of her demigod power. And because Izzy is also a demigod, being the daughter of the crone and Grace's cousin, her and Izzy come together and use their power to attack Cyrus. Grace pulls all of the power that he had just sucked out of all of their friends and essentially gives it back to them. Her demigod and her gargoyle strings merge together and she's able to grow her wing back. Then the gargoyle army shows up. Yay! Chastain bows to her and calls her their queen, and she gives orders to battle on and end this war. Grace then realizes that because she's interacted with this whole army, she now has strings for every single one of Cyrus's army. So she pulls on all of those strings and turns them all to stone. The god of time shows up and tells her she can't do this, but she says, "Yes, I can, because my demigod powers are all here." And he says, "You're right, you can do this." So he then sits and watches. She then uses the crown to take Cyrus's power away, but she takes only his power, making him human, but still leaves immortality for him, so he will live forever. She then brings him and Delilah to the Bloodletter's cave. When she gets there, she sees that Alistair has found the Bloodletter and they're living happily. She then gives the Bloodletter the crown because that is what Alistair said to do when he gave her the crown, was give this to my mate. Now that the Bloodletter has the crown, she has enough power to break through her confines and actually leave her cave, which she's never been able to do. Grace also decides to leave Delilah and Cyrus locked in the cave as his punishment and help for her to get her revenge. He's human, but will live forever, so she can essentially feed on him for all of time. Once the Bloodletter is out of the cave, she gives the crown back to Grace. And then they all go back to the lighthouse. That's where the story ends. Things are all wrapped up, but then we get an epilogue. The epilogue takes place 3 months later when Grace and Hudson have decided to move to San Diego. He's studying to be a doctor and she is studying international politics so she can be a better queen. She's looking at plans and pricing because she decided to move the gargoyle court there instead of Ireland. Hudson abdicated the throne of the vampire court to be Grace's king. Eden now shows up telling them that they found out how to contact the Shadow Queen, who they need her help to cure Mackay from this poison, bite, curse thing that he got in the trials. She tells them it's time to go and they decide they need to rally the troops. Hudson decides to finally tell Grace what he promised her on the promise ring, which was, "I will love you, Grace, till the sun grows old and the stars grow cold," or something like that. And then all of a sudden, boom, she remembers what happened during the 4 months that they were stuck in her gargoyle. All right, you guys. So that was really long, but like that's what happened during court. So hopefully that will give you a nice little refresher of where we're going into in Cherish with the whole Mackay storyline, and then where we're going into, or how it led into Grace remembering what happened during the 4 months that we're going to get in Charm. So can't wait to see what happens in both of these books. If you have any questions, or if I missed something, or if I said something wrong, let me know. But I tried to get everything pretty succinct for you guys. It's a big book, so a lot happens. Don't forget, you can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at The Fun Size Reader. See you guys next time.